I was in the 4th grade in school in the United States, and a man came into the room and said, "Who wants to be in the band? What would you like to play?" "The saxophone." And he handed me a clarinet. and I loathed it. I really loathed it. And I thought I was trying, but I was probably intentionally playing it badly. And one day he said, when I was 13, "It can't get any worse. Why don't you go get yourself a saxophone?" And it changed just like that. Because I don't think that we choose our instruments. I think our instruments choose us, and I was just waiting to play that instrument. And it was an immediate change. It was the voice that, I don't know if I'm any good at it, but it was the one that I liked playing, that's for sure. So I played through the whole public school scene in the States, and then I went, because in those days we didn't have any idea we just didn't know. I mean, kids didn't know what to do. I didn't know that you could actually play the instrument, get paid for it, outside of playing at the firehouse or the Moose Club or something. And so I went off to be a band director. I escaped. Well, I really kind of like them all, but I'm very fond of the cello. I like instruments that sing.
It's in that similar range, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. But you know, I have an Armenian pianist friend, and he accompanies me on tours occasionally. And he introduced me to an instrument called the duduk, and it looks like a recorder, but up here is this great big double reed. You almost have to open your mouth manually to get this thing in. But it makes the most remarkable and mystical human vocal sound. And there are some real wonderful players in Iran and in Armenia. And I really love that instrument. In fact, I have, not the recording is just coming out, but the next one, I play some things in which I was channeling the duduk. I was really wishing to be that instrument. And it was so funny, because my pianist is hopelessly Armenian. He's been in America for 15 years, but you know, it's about Armenia. But we finished playing one of these pieces, and oddly enough, it was a Western song, and he said, "Maestro, you have achieved the duduk." But it is a gorgeous instrument. So, instruments that touch people, instruments that sing. Sometimes I've come to Europe and done concerts with an organist in Italy, and I've done alto and tenor. I don't know if you guys know the Paul Creston Rhapsody with organ. It's really a wonderful piece. It's just terrific. But in the States, I only play the tenor. I've made it a career playing the tenor. I have enough concerti that all I need is more orchestras. And that's part of the deal. I'm always working that neighborhood, trying to figure out, well, Jesus, I got to play that piece before I quit. And so I keep, trying to find more pieces, more places to play the pieces that are written for me. I love to play recitals, and I'll tell you a little bit, just quickly. I think you guys are probably in better health here and in Europe, because maybe the audiences are more intelligent than Americans. They're hopeless. But it's not their fault. The American educational system isn't worth a puddle of spit. But I try to figure out new and challenging projects. One summer I bought every book that I could find that had a mention of the saxophone in it. Poetry with saxophone. Whatever. There's a wonderful book called Rhode Island Red. It's about an African American who gets a doctorate at Princeton. And then she starts playing her saxophone on the street because that's what she really wants. So part of the book is she and her parents constantly disagreeing, and she makes these wonderful and expansive, outrageous statements. What is more fun than reading one of those wonderful moments and then playing a piece of music that has some relationship to it? I'm busy trying to turn recitals into entertainments because recitals are boring. When I was an undergraduate student, I remember hearing a famous cellist play 4 long sonatas in a row. And he played beautifully, and it was wonderful, and it was meaningful, but he made no effort to bring us into the tent whatsoever. He was daring us to sit there. So I've tried to think of it that way a little bit. I play with bands quite a bit. I have a band repertoire, and I enjoy it a great deal. Particularly, you know, we have some great college bands. They are absolutely killer. But I like to play with amateur bands, people who are there out of love. Oh my goodness, you get some really special music making. There can be problems, but that's not it. I play with great orchestras, and backstage all you hear is bitching. But these amateur groups, oh, they're in love, and so you get a very different vibe, a hugely different energy. And I'm just looking for some background against which I can hope to make music, and maybe things happening that haven't happened before, because there's this wonderful attitude in the air.
You said Simgard Reichert was your teacher. He was very much a purist, wasn't he, kind of in setup and sound and kind of vibrato. What have you taken and what have you developed from that? Because you've obviously got a lot more personal, larger, I suppose, more expressive sound to what one would say is the American tradition of the saxophone playing.
Rasher was into control. I mean, it's perfectly obvious. And if you haven't heard any of his recordings from the middle of his life, the early middle of his life, his altissimo was absolutely frightening. There's a recording of a piece by Henry Brandt, American composer, and it's a concerto, but I forget, he didn't call it a barnyard concerto, but he called it some kind of an agrarian name, because it was all about, like Aaron Copland in a way, square dances, and Rasher would just run on up in unthinkable ways. And in those days, they were recording with one take. They weren't in there clipping stuff, you know. The most important thing I took from him, because I had the privilege to be with him, and I didn't study with him constantly for a very long time, but we communicated for years and years. I took a certain intellectual seriousness about making music. The very thing we were just talking about with the Coltrane. It's easy to play the notes, but it's a little harder to begin to try to get inside and ferret out how to put this thing together. And he would always do those things with me. One day I wrote him a letter, and I sent him a tape, which was always a risk, because he would tell you exactly what he thought. He was brutal. But I said to him, I'm doing what I can to get inside of this piece, because it was a very complex piece written by a colleague of mine. And he wrote back and said, that's exactly it. That's the goal, to get inside of the music. Because a lot of us stay outside. We're just playing the notes. When in fact...
It's a compositional kind of...
Oh, and well, it's wonderful. Once you begin to get inside of pieces, you never run out of things to do. And that's kind of how he did it. He would send us, if you went to his workshop at Eastman School of Music, he would send you a piece of music that was nothing but notes on lines, ledger lines. And you had to figure out the meter, you had to figure the whole thing out. And then you were asked to venture a guess as to what you would play. It might be Vivaldi, it might be Bach, who knows? But it would just be these notes. And he was trying to bring us to be more connected to the music, because saxophonists are sort of notorious for just kind of banging it out because the saxophone is such a willing partner. Find young composers who are as hungry to be heard as you are to play, and get them to write pieces for free.
Yeah.
And of that early crop, none are in my working repertoire, but they were a launch pad. And they were good for those guys, because in many cases, I played some of those pieces many times while I was waiting for something more substantial. I think you have to be fairly courageous, which means, in my life, I've always been it may not seem that way tonight, but I've been a little reticent to step up and be bold. Therefore I got a later start than I might have, because I just I wasn't always comfortable walking up and saying the words, you know. But eventually I began to see how it worked, and certainly I had a great example with Rasher. I mean, I think the Glazunov and the eBay are pretty good starts, and those were the best things that ever happened for him. And he rode them like a mule for his entire life, and that's a good thing. And meanwhile, he also, if it makes any difference, I don't expect a lot to happen after I die, at least that I'm going to be aware of. And I don't even care, I guess, but on the other hand, it would be nice to have lived and created some legacy. And my students may be my legacy, but at the same time, if out of these 85 pieces, a half a dozen actually prevail, well, at least I provided some small start to what I guess is a movement. But none of that's all that important to me. I've just really been having fun. I've been playing the saxophone and trying to create environments in which I could do it, and the environment's got to start with a piece of music. So as time went on, I bothered better and better composers. I gained my courage. I began to figure out how it might happen. We've spent $40,000 on a single piece, but you learn how to build a consortium, how to get 8 or 10 orchestras to buy in, and then you find an angel along the way or some magic moment, and it happens. But part of it is just getting up every day and being rather tenacious about it. This is not a job for which there is a job application nor any job description, and so much of it is driven by personal profile. I mean, I can be pretty damn dogged about something I'm trying to do, and then sometimes, frankly, you get a crazy idea and you run with it. Just run with it, and less questioning and more action. I'm planning a concert in New York City, probably Washington, New York, and San Francisco in 2014 to celebrate Adolph Sax's 200th birthday. It's pretty ballsy, but I got money from the ambassador of Belgium once before, so I'll go back and bother him again. And I'll bother manufacturers and any other group of people who might buy in. But it's a little audacious, but if you're audacious, that means you're really going to feel it by yourself. You haven't got a lot of folks out there because not many folks can crank it up and go for it. So I just kept believing and not sleeping that much. But it's been great fun. And it's not over yet. It's just terrific. But the challenge is that there are no jobs. I said this yesterday to the kids at the Royal College. We have 450 or so such orchestras in the United States. Got to be thousands of performances in a year. And I go through the listings, and you might find 5 saxophonists playing in those thousands of performances. So, but we've got to set out to make a change. And part of the change is the conductors are afraid to hire us because they're afraid that people in the audience will be offended because we're playing this modern instrument. They'd rather hear yet another damn pianist. And honestly, the way it works in the States, and tell me if it works this way here, but in the States, they don't hire many wind soloists unless it's a Galway, because they promised a concerto date for the principal clarinet, the principal flute, the principal... Everybody's promised one over time. Well, that means we're advantaged because there's no saxophonists, so we ought to be in there, and we should be selling ourselves by saying something unique. Your audience loves the saxophone, and it's true. I mean, I get on planes and I put the damn thing in the overhead, and some woman will say, "What's that?" And I'll go, "Oh, it's a tenor saxophone." I love the saxophone. But it's ridiculous for them to be afraid of it. So we need to market. We need to get past it. And we don't always do that. And then we have to play music that the entire audience wants to hear. We have to decide that we're not going to play anything that's vaguely repugnant. And if my mother doesn't like it, then you shouldn't play it. My mother's 89 and very opinionated. So my wife tells me.
heard a couple of your recordings in the past of the concertos that you've had written for you, and I've noticed they've all had this quite similar kind of pastoral, kind of American sound. Is that something that they've picked up on your playing, or something that you've asked? I'm talking about the Peck, the Gold, and what's the other one?
Ewazen.
Yeah.
The middle movement of the Ewazen is so beautiful. Oh my God, it's ethereal. But the outsides aren't really pastoral. They're hopelessly American.
That neoclassical American style, kind of cinematic kind of way. Because I mean, I've noticed that. I mean, something like compared to Edith Schwartz, they're very different kind of composers.
See, this is so interesting because I say to people, how the hell did Rasher influence people to write music that was so patently Rasher? I had the feeling he was in there saying, no, let's do this. But maybe they do respond to us. The Peck is really a different piece because it's...
Because he was originally a very contemporary composer when he was growing up.
Oh, he was a crazy man.
But then he became this kind of new kind of...
Yeah, kind of. There's a romantic side to it. In the back, you can hear boom, dick, boom.
Yeah.
There's a spot. Rock and roll. He got his doctorate at the University of Michigan and went on the road as a rock and roll pianist with a band. But I'll never forget it. We were rehearsing the premiere of this wonderful piece, and right near the end, to get it kicked up, the saxophone goes doo-dick, and I'm going doo-dick, and he, from the back of the hall, goes, no, Jim, and he goes, and those are the moments that you remember. But that was a perfect depiction. It was really rock and roll. Whether I don't know. I think of them as being so damn different. The Ward is certainly pastoral, but he's kind of an Ohio OG kind of a guy, and he was an opera composer. We were with him 2 weeks ago. He's 93 and good. 3 weeks ago. So I don't know that there isn't that remarkable though, that I felt that about Rasher and you feel that about.
Yeah. They have that kind of sound, all kind of in that idiom, and then you compare it to some of the other living composers like Elliot Schwartz and say Elliot Carter. It's very different sounding.
Oh yeah, I would never have asked Elliot Carter for a piece.
Okay.
Because my mother wouldn't want to hear it.
So maybe it's a partly both ways. That kind of.
Yeah, it's a career deal. To whom are you going to pay a lot of money for a piece? And do you want to have it played once? Or would you like it to be a vehicle for your career and for the advancement of the instrument that you play and love? And the latter is obviously true in my...
Have you ever commissioned somebody and only played it once?
Yes. Well, no, I played it more than once, but you played in one of those performances. And that was supposed to be a pastoral piece of music. It just turned out to be a piece of caca. But it happens. It's like going to Las Vegas. You can't win on every roll. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the chance to be here. And thank you for putting up with me all this time. And I hope we'll see each other again.
Yeah.